Hello and welcome to the Lore You Know. My caffeine hasn't quite kicked in yet, but we're on episode 19. I do know that. The Life of the Asaatthi. This is part two of our,
Yep,
our Asaatthi chat because there is a lot to
because
know
there's a
about
lot.
them. Yeah. And in
Um,
fact, as we were talking about beforehand, there's a lot to know about them that you will not find in the 5th edition whatsoever. And we'll go over that. So, welcome
yeah.
to my wonderful co host, Sarah. How's your day going?
Hi. It's warm here in
It's
Seattle.
warm.
It's very warm. And it's on fire. We were just talking about that.
Yeah, I hope that goes out soon.
Our respective states are on fire.
But
It's
like
fun.
we also were talking about, we're not having to live through the crap that the Asaatthi have had to live through.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's a plus to everything.
We don't have Gulaben and Thulkas and the death of our god
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
or or being completely rewritten by game
Or
writers.
or ignored, right? Yeah, yeah.
But
So,
I want to preface this. I'm not running Twitch today because Discord will be less likely to crash on me.
that's
So I
completely fair.
cannot see the pictures you're putting up.
Okay.
So we need to give me a heads up on whatever it is you're showing
So
everybody.
right now we're just doing the 5e Asaatthi character art.
That's fine.
Yay.
Start with that. So I'm going to be talking about. Well, I'm talking about this book. Skylands Player Guide hardcover is so heavy.
It is
This
a
is the
beast
Skylands
of a
Player Guide
book.
5e.
Yeah.
The one we talk about an awful lot, which is all the new 5e stuff. And then, but I'm also mostly going to be talking about this skinny little monster. It's really not that skinny. It's 120 pages long.
It is,
We covered chapter 1 last time.
and it is one of the
And
beefiest race books.
yeah,
Like I think even I just feel like it was heavier. It was so dense with info compared to like even the Slytherin, like the Rat
yeah.
Men one.
Oh, way denser.
Yeah,
It's different.
it's a
It's different
lot
dense.
to digest.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to try to cover chapter 3 and then touch on some stuff from the other chapters.
Cool.
But I'm mostly going to cover chapter 3. Because it's Life of the Asaatthi, and this is why. So, last time we talked about the history, and I would say that with 5e, the history up until the Divine War, and up through the Divine War is valid. Like, everything I talked about last time, up to the death of Mormo, there's nothing that contradicts any of that significantly. I think we're fine there. But, after the war, things actually during the war, I would say, like upon the death of Mormo, things shift quite a bit. And this I'm gonna say this out like right away. Preface this. When I picked up the SLPG, it was a Kickstarter. We backed it. We got the PDF ages before,
Yeah.
and I I kind of went through the same emotions that I went through when I picked up um, Gauntlet of Sparagos, which was they've changed a whole bunch, and I was irritated. Less so with the SLPG because it was exciting. Starlands was really truly coming back. This Gauntlet of Sparagos was this little module. Who knows if it meant anything? This was like, oh, we have this giant book. It's real.
Yeah.
But I remember reading through it and liking a bunch of stuff, but then going, what the hell with a bunch of stuff? And I
Yeah.
think my biggest what the hell was the Asaatthi? And I had a hard time with it. And I kind of put it out of my mind, like, I'm doing anything with the Asaatthi. I never really did much with the Asaatthi when I ran. It's probably okay. It's weird, but it's... And now I'm like, no, this just irritates me. I am prefacing this with, I did not like this change. I do not like this change. This is so different that it effectively negates, other than chapter 1, the history, this negates almost everything else in this book, which is sad, in my opinion, because it was some really, really cool shit. And it's gonna take some work. If there's an intent to mesh this stuff, it's gonna be hard to mesh this stuff. So, you're just nodding.
Yeah. I'm sure that you will get to the things. So
Things that okay. So in the history we talked about, there was 3 cities that woke up after the Great Sleep, and one was destroyed by Yuan Ti. So there you had 2 cities left. I did confirm that the two cities were indeed, scrolls back up, were the Jeweled City was the city of the Swamps of Ketinas, is the same city it's always been. And then the Desert Paradise, which isn't even on this map, was the city of sages far Ithisi. One of those original 6 cities of the Asaatthi. So of the 6 cities, 2 survived. I am now convinced that the original Asaatthi city is probably Baratray. The capital of the Elven community in Galspad
Gotcha.
was built on the ruins of the primary Asaatthi city
Yeah,
because
very likely was.
very likely it was because it says that and it doesn't specify which city it was, but that's the only city left that would map. So, and then I think the others are probably somewhere in Albania, maybe Bridge City, and somewhere we don't live on the Keldars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So that's all of them. So that's my theory. And that probably the Serpent Mount might have been Bridge City. I don't know, or someplace like that.
Gotcha.
But the idea that humans and other races built on top of Asaatthi ruins from millennia before is just cool. The idea that maybe there's a bunch of dead Asaatthi corpses somewhere buried in your city.
Right.
Or potentially hibernating Asaatthi, but they would be hibernating for thousands of years, so unlikely. So anywho, what is different? So, in the original book, the Asaatthi were mad at losing, retreated back to the Jeweled City, and were basically kind of continue their culture for the next 150 years, and were basically like looking the finger at all the other races and being very isolationist and enslaving humans and other species as they find them. And then the Asaatthi in the desert were trying to reclaim their old city and rebuild it, but because of everything that happened there, I'll get into that in a bit, but it gets complicated. But similar culture, so basically Mormites on both ends, and it made the swamps of Kentet very, very dangerous because basically it's completely controlled by the Asaatthi, and anybody who goes in there is, if you're not going to get eaten by an alligator or a swamp monster, you're going to get killed by snake people.
Right.
But they had this like huge, interesting culture and all of this stuff. And in the new book, the desert folks weren't really touched much beyond the other changes that happen in the desert as a result of like the Sutak, with the Ironbred running around. The Sutak were sort of their allies and and the Daywalkers, they're sort of like they enslave them still, so it's debatable whether they're allies, but they're not considered. Basically the Asaatthi just hated everybody who is an Asaatthi in the original. But the desert one isn't. Well, I can't say it hasn't changed because it is changed. Everything changed. Everything changed. So the desert, the city in the original they woke up. Some of them woke up. They were being protected by liches, basically. So the guardians every city had guardians, and some of the guardians went mad, and some of the guardians died, and some of the guardians fucked off. And in most of the cities, which is why 3 of the cities they didn't even wake up. This city, the guardians went to lichdom to extend their lives so that they could guard the hibernating, sleeping Asaatthi. Hibernating is the right word. More like put into hibernation, like sci-fi.
Right. Yeah.
kind of vibe. So folks who were sleeping for hundreds and thousands of years. So these guardians basically went and became liches, and so there's a bunch of them. There wasn't just one guardian. There was a good pile of them, a dozen or more, and that's how they protected them. And they would basically be kind of nearish the surface, and they got their immortality. A lot of them got their immortality by sucking the lives out of the people they're supposed to be protecting. Good job there, but
right.
didn't kill them all and kept enough alive that they got their job done. But as a result, post-war, when they finally woke everybody up, or not post-Divine War, but post Ice Age, I should say, post Ice Age, when they woke everybody up, they basically were like, and we are in control because we're super powerful liches, and the people waking up are
Okay.
okay, whatever you want. Not really
Thanks.
with it, because
Thanks for not eating my soul.
yeah, basically. So, so in the original book, the desert paradise of the Asath is run by a council of liches and head by a lich lord. Okay. Yeah, Msehel, Mishel, and the Cynosure of the Orb. So he's basically a super powerful Asathi lich. He's
Yeah.
illegal, of course, because you're a lich. And that's a magiocratic dictatorship. So he runs the show, they follow. And I can't say the new book really contradicts that, except where it contradicts that. It doesn't. The Desert Paradise does not go into detail. You don't get a city description like you get the little like government and population and all that. No, actually, the new book doesn't have populations for like anything, but you don't get the little village block that you get. Basically, just says it was once mighty, then Fulkas screwed everything up with his giant explosion during the Divine War. It was abandoned for a while. Now it's been reclaimed. But it then says there are hanging gardens and serene waters below. Nothing in this that I could find, maybe there's something buried, but I couldn't find it, implies
Yeah.
serene waters and hanging gardens in the Desert Paradise.
So
it's called the Desert Paradise because it used to be a desert paradise several hundred years ago.
so you're saying the new information says that they're
The
serene.
new book
Gotcha.
says it's serene with hanging gardens of Babylon, and I'm like,
I mean, maybe they've installed them since then, like through magic.
okay.
But I mean, they wouldn't survive very well up in the desert, so they've like put them underneath the city. Hey, I'm just trying to.
I know, but get this. And they talk about spawning grounds. Okay, that's consistent with the old books. Breeding an army. Yeah, that's consistent with the old books. Being allied with the Jinn, who are still trapped in the Great Inferno of the City of Brass.
That's a little harder.
There is nothing in here that implies the Asaatthi were ever allied with the Jinn. I was like, where did that come from? That's new. The allies of the Jinn were the Elzen Empire.
Yeah, the Elzen Empire were huge Jinn followers.
So that was new. Like, okay, we can do that. So, but the other big thing in this about the city, which I think is really cool and is a good seed for adventuring, is that the shit happened, and the liches had control of some of the city, but the rest of the city during the big sleep got messed up by monsters and magic and all sorts of crazy stuff, and is now this deadly catacombs and deadly stuff that the Asaatthi have no control over. And they're like, we control this bit of what used to be the City of Sages, which is like a fifth of it.
Gotcha.
And the rest of it is no man's land, and you don't go there because you'll get eaten by a grue.
Yeah.
Or probably something way bigger than a grue. Something horrible. And there's monsters, and it's just seeds for adventure. Like, you can imagine, like, the Asaatthi hiring, I guess, an evil adventuring party, because they're evil. I don't know. Or playing Asaatthi and going in and finding out what's there and trying to reclaim something. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and it could pretty well track, especially with the history of the world and just the way that shit shifts around and monsters take over areas. If a lot of this area was sleeping, then and you had like liches eating the souls of some of them, and they're not going to come back as
they abandoned the city, because what they did was they created these like kind of catacombs underneath the ground, moved in there, and that's where they hibernated. So the city basically closed it up, sealed the entrances, and then went down. It was, remember, this was during the night. This was during the Ice Age, so they're moving underground
Right.
as like it's getting colder, we can't tolerate it anymore, and it took decades before they just made this decision
Yeah.
and moved. And each individual 6 cities made this kind of the same decision with and they were able to talk to each other via magic. And so they go underground probably several decades into the Ice Age. But they abandon the city. So it isn't even just that and the city was stood abandoned for a couple thousand years.
Yeah.
And then even as they woke up, another couple thousand years pass where the population's rough and they're off mucking about and doing stuff. So they didn't really dig into it.
Yeah.
So this several like 4,000 or 5,000 years, the other 4/5 of the city are and they just don't have the power
Right.
to go in, clean it out. And it's like, we've got this, we've solidified this much, and they're just like slowly like, we have claimed another building, you know. Like every decade they're like, we've spread a little longer. Yeah.
Right.
So that was the plot of this one. I thought was pretty neat.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
dealing with who knows what monsters and magic and traps and strange stuff. And who was living in there for those centuries? Cool shit.
Totally.
No mention of it in the new book at all. Just hanging gardens and shining waters and they're evil.
Right.
So that's the difference in the city, lost city, and the desert.
Yeah.
Oh, and although consistent with the desert paradise, they do not call it the City of Sages. They don't. They admit it is built on some of the ruins of the City of Sages, but we cannot call it that because we do not truly have the entirety of the city. And I think both books kind of, the new book doesn't explicitly state this, but it doesn't mention the City of Sages at all, honestly. So it's like, other than built on the ruins of an old Asaatthi city. So there you go.
Right.
It's 2 paragraphs. There's not much here. The big change. The big change is in the Swamps of Cantet, which made me actually pause and stop reading the book because I was so mad. Because I'd read this book decades ago, long before, well, not decade, but a decade ago. I ran, there's a great adventure at the back of it that I ran for my players back in the day. I don't even know if Fran remembers it. It was like a blip. They were going from Shelzar to Fangsfall and ran through the Swamps of Cantet, and I was like, I'm gonna run this adventure. And they ran into some weird stuff. But the implication is this whole, I can't really show it very well on the map because it's behind my head, but this whole area, you could show the Swamps of Cantet in your thing. And with this map is, there's all these districts and basically states.
Yeah.
They've divided up. And while it's all still swampland and not solid land, there's settlements, there's towns, there's little cities, and there's a giant capital. And they call it the lost city of the Asath, and there's nothing lost implied when you actually, it's lost because the Asathi are isolationists, not because no one knows where the city is, because there's a road that goes straight there, you know. They know where the city is.
Right.
It's not hard to find. Just walk in, some Asathi will capture you and drag you in chains to the city.
Found it.
Yeah. So it's like, why is it called the Lost City? It's called the city. It's called the Jeweled City. And in the new book, it's called the Jeweled City. It doesn't say anything about being lost either. But in the new book, so in the old book, it's ruled by a council, and it's fairly complicated. You've got, I want to get it right. The city itself, 20,000. The new book doesn't have a population, so it's probably similar. Ruled by High Council, magiocracy, i.e., you have to be a mage, but that isn't hard. And they basically there's government is, the High Council consists of 50 members, representative from each of the prefectures, i.e. states, or whatever you want to call them, and plus some people represented from the city. And there is a leader. No, each one member serves for 20 years. So this is kind of, you know, a really well-defined government and all of that business. They don't have a PM or a leader, prime minister, or anything like that. just have this council and everything. They decide everything, and there's like lots of infighting and all this stuff. In the new book, so that's the old book. So council, but they're evil and they have all these things. In the new book, it is a absolute monarchy ruled by a queen, who's the third in line. So, and basically in the new book, the concept is that a Mormo died in the Hornsot, and the entire, majority of the Asaatthi population were on the battlefield here. Watched Mormo die. And in the old book, they get upset and sad and slunk back off to home. And a few of them stay in the Hornsot and help a bunch of hags try to put Mormo back together. In the new book, there is relief among certain members of the Asaatthi that they're no longer under the yoke of Mormo, who they haven't followed since their leaders the immortality was yanked from their leaders thousands of years ago, at the end of the cities before the Ice Age happened, and they're glad she's dead. Certain subpopulation,
yeah,
I should say. They're glad she's dead, and they rose up, killed their druid leaders. A bunch of the druid leaders ran away and went to the desert. The rest of them, basically, they nominated one of their rebelling leaders to be their queen, and went to the humans and went, "We will be allies with you now." And
gotcha.
suddenly the good guys
so
overnight.
really what they did is they came up with a story version of why there are now not evil Asaatthi to play as a player character. Because previously they were all evil, and so if you wanted to play one, it was either play an evil one or play the Dritst of the Asaatthi.
But to be fair, the Dritst of the Asaatthi weren't super rare. It wasn't like there was the Dritst.
Right.
You could have dozens of Asaatthi Dritsts.
Yeah. When you read into the life chapter, the life of the Asaatthi chapter, I feel like they really do explain why you can have a wide variety of alignments within the Asaatthi, even though like their monster manual entry, they're all evil. That doesn't need to be the case.
Yeah, and I'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah.
So this was the deal, and so she becomes queen. They go back to the swamps of Kandet, and she basically says, "No, we're not revoking. We're renouncing. We're renouncing Mormo. She hasn't done anything for us in thousands of years anyway, so screw her. And if you want to follow and we're gonna say all the gods are groovy. We're gonna make a temple to the gods. They're all created equally. If you want to worship whoever you want, we don't care. And this is what we're gonna do from now on. And we're gonna be allies with the people that we used to enslave and eat." Who we thought were the worst thing ever,
right?
The humans, like, bleh. And now we're like, no, we're fine with them. And our greatest allies are Fang's Fall, and the Iron Citadel, and our greatest, and like we love the humans of Fang's Fall and the Iron Bread of the Iron Citadel who have poo-pooed to the suits.
As you say, all I can think of is it's a trap. Like,
know,
this is just them setting up for them to be like, okay, so we went through this hibernation. We came back really, really weakened. How do we get everyone to lay down their defenses? We got it.
Well, the thing is, that was the first queen. So she had a son. He became king. He ruled for 80 years. And he had a daughter, and she became queen, and she's ruled for 50. So 130 years... So presumably this has been the case since Mormon fell.
Yeah.
I don't know, the first queen apparently lived 20, 30 years, but for 130 years we've had two monarchs in a row who are like, no, this is the way it is. And so this dynasty has lasted for 3 generations. And it's an absolute monarchy. So and that's the other thing that gets me the most is, so when they were evil Mormoites, they had a ruling council of 50 people who had to get along, and now that they're neutral good, they're a monarchy. The other one was an elected representative democracy.
Right.
And now they're a monarchy, which I don't know. The irony, I love it.
It is interesting
What?
because so the first queen ruled for 50 years. You said.
They're like I don't. It's not clear, but they said her son ruled for 80, and the current queen has ruled for 50. So I doing the math backward,
Yeah.
30ish.
I'm just curious why their reigns were so short, considering they live to be over 200 years old.
I figured when she rebelled against the druids, she was really flipping old.
And that makes sense for her, but like as far as her
Yeah.
son and the
Oh well,
current,
her
like,
son ruled 80, so figured if she was old, he was probably old when he inherited the throne.
that's fair. That's
And he
fair.
ruled for 80, and then his daughter's still ruling.
Yeah.
She's not that old. She's been ruling for 50. Yeah, it's about reason. I don't think the ages. The ages don't really bother me.
Gotcha.
And imagine.
No,
I
that makes sense
imagine.
now that you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine the first queen was probably, this pretty powerful wizard who had, her son at her side and going, no, we're going to do this. And the daughter probably wasn't, but the granddaughter probably wasn't born yet.
And you know the
But
the idea of the queen taking over is interesting also because of their history with those immortals.
yeah,
Like it's almost like she was trying to take back that idea, even though her son is the one who followed it up. Like maybe she didn't have a daughter to do so, but like you have these
well, because
long-lived.
it was always matrilinear,
Right,
and
right.
that there was actually, and I think, I don't know, I think that's just the creators. Like I said, this is the Jeweled City in this
Yeah,
book is like 4 paragraphs.
yeah. That is a huge
Not much.
problem with the. I don't want to say it's a problem because there are resources to go back to, but when they do contradict each other like this, you are like, well, why? Give me more
Five
information. Tell me why. Um,
paragraphs.
because the fifth edition book is massive, but it is also an entire setting
Oh yeah,
crammed into one book with players,
yeah.
DMs, monsters, all of the information you need to run it. So it's real light in certain areas, such as
Well, I mean,
this.
this book is the equivalent of 5 books
Mm,
from the
mm,
original run,
mm.
because when you account for the fact that it has stuff from the Galspad campaign setting, stuff from uh, Relics and Rituals,
Yeah,
stuff from the Creature Collection, it's worth at least 3 books.
yeah,
And that stuff, and there's little bits from several other books. So from the Gazetteer, and so it's they crammed what would have been 3 or 4 books
right.
originally, at least 3 books
Yeah,
originally,
they definitely
into one.
gave
So yeah,
they gave the fifth edition players the
the breadcrumbs.
yeah, like the meal that makes you want more for
Yeah,
fifth edition, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
awesome. So I'm not saying don't go get the book. The book is
Oh,
awesome, but
definitely
it
get
is also cool that they opened the Celestian Vault not long thereafter, and therefore stuff like what we're talking about today, someone can go update that for fifth edition,
yeah. So someone could go and resolve someone.
right?
Let me finish resolving the Slytherin before I go resolve the Asaatthi.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. You
someone
finished
can
that.
Slytherin. I was busy working something else that we're gonna talk about next week.
That's fair.
And my art's not done. Um, but anyway, so Jewel City, 4 paragraphs, absolute monarchy, and that's much it. So, that was kind of the fundamental differences between the new book and the old book.
But as far as those states go, those are still pretty much. I have that map from the third edition up.
Presumably, yeah,
Presumably
presumably
still
those
the
states
thing.
could exist in both.
Yeah.
Um, and some of the culture roots I think still work. But one of the other problems that I ran into is the description of the Asath, which loses to me all of the glorious flavor of playing Asath. Now, the big problem being that if you were to play an Asath PC back in the 3.5 days, you were dealing with those level adjustments.
Right.
And you were starting, if you were the weeniest, and we're going to talk about the different, what do
Yeah.
you call them?
They would have been like level 6, but they would have been an Asaatthi with one level of the
Well,
class. Is that right?
the absolute weeniest Asath you could play, Asaatthi, the breeds, the lowest breed has no level adjustment. And I suspect this is probably what they took. And yet still, they have abilities that are lacking in the 5e book. And I was like, but the lowest breed, wow, I gotta read this because this is the only one that doesn't have a level adjustment. Most of them level adjustments range anywhere from +2 to +6.
Yeah.
5 +5. Normally, Asaatthi deal with genetic diseases by controlling breeding. Those born handicapped. Okay, this was written in 2000.
Right. Yeah.
3. Forgive their language. Regulated to a lesser part of society, but protected as Asaatthi nonetheless. Even an impaired Asaatthi is considered superior to other races as long as he or she is a productive member of society. Although if it's a she, you're not allowed to breed. Some of the smaller enclaves, more isolated tribes, significant inbreeding formed the Raseki. Stubby tails, poor vision, lesser intelligence, and poor health are all common to this breed. So basically, they're runty derpy.
Yeah. I have the breeds art up right now, so if you're looking at it right now on Twitch, I'm pretty sure it's the one in the front right where it almost looks like it almost looks like a Slytherin, like because it almost has like a rat face and they're all hunched over like the Slytherin art, and but no, that is a snake person.
Yeah, that is meant to be the snake person. And you note that there's also one that looks awfully human,
yeah,
with just a slightly flat nose,
yeah,
and one that looks awfully orc-like.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be snake person-like, not orc-like, but looks more human. And then 4 that actually look like snake people. So, although some are more scaly than others. So yeah, that little weird hunchback messed up snake guy is supposed to be this, which is the only one that doesn't have a level adjustment.
Yeah.
It gets a bunch of modifiers to its stats. It doesn't even get dark vision.
Man,
it doesn't have poison, which is like okay. But it is still a spellcaster. Because every single Asaatthi in this is a spellcaster. Every flipping one.
Yeah.
And that's the thing they took away that makes me go.
Yeah.
Because that's what made them cool.
Yeah, like in the beginning, it's like every one of them is raised learning magic.
It's like you're 6. Okay, so I'm gonna get into the breeding of the Asaatthi, which is like an amazing thing. But every single one, like you old enough to like leave the breeding pool.
Right.
You learn to read and write and basic math and magic. And these are like the fundamental, like every Asaatthi who lives in the swamps of Cantat can cast prestidigitation.
Right.
Every or something equivalent. You know, like I'm picturing 10-year-olds pickpocketing each other with mage hand. You know, every single one can do this.
Right.
It's just fundamental to their society.
Yeah. Just like how elves in 5th edition, like all of them get their like little magical ability or whatever, and that's because of their fey nature. Like they have you know, they have and so it's explained, but like while they're not magical in nature, they're magical in culture. Like their society is like, you're gonna learn this before you do anything else, you know, or in concordance to learning these basic life things. Yeah, and so that's sad.
Yeah, so the only Asaatthi that wouldn't be able to do magic were ones that either didn't grow up in the swamps of Cantat or the desert, because they do this in both locations.
Right.
Or they're really messed up, you know, because even the derpiest ones
have magic.
have first level sorcerers. Even the derpiest ones.
Yeah.
So then, and they're not even listed as wizards. So even your absolute simplest Asaatthi can cast a cantrip.
Right. And
that's, to me, is like, you should have had. I mean, because we don't have gnomes anymore, right? Like so Scarredlands doesn't have, you know how gnomes have like, and you can cast a cantrip,
right?
You know, or some kind of, and you get a bonus, you know, you get a bonus cantrip as you level, or you get a bonus spell slot as you level, or something like that. They should have had something like that, and I'm very disappointed that they
Yeah.
didn't give us something, because magic was so instrumental in the culture. Ooh, okay, so there's my complaint of why I'm like, I can't speak ill of the dead, but
Yeah. I
but
mean,
I'm
it
speaking ill of the dead
it isn't
apparently.
just on a player side of it. It's not like, oh, I lost this thing. It's a cultural identity thing that kind of like changes the concept behind them and their entire society. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's kind of sad.
I thought it was really sad, so I didn't like that. But but let's go into what they were like, and we got to think about, like, we don't got it, but to think about the how we reconcile this change. Like, this is what the book, how it was described, because there's not a lot here. We've got, you know, 2 paragraphs on one location, 4 paragraphs in another location, and the record for the race. And the record for the race, you read the record for the race, and it's basically like, so they're humans with tails.
And fangs.
Really, humans with tails and fangs that don't work
Right.
because
Yeah.
there's no poison anymore. It's like, okay, I get that they took the poison away, and even in this book, they're like, yeah, they used to have poison, and they could conceivably poison like a hamster, but they're not gonna. There's not enough. No, it literally does say that. They're like,
That's
they can
awesome.
poison. There's enough poison in their saliva to knock out like a
Right.
small beast, but it's not gonna do anything to a human or anything. It's like, so it's like, I get that they don't have poison anymore. That's fine. They didn't have poison in the 3-5 book, but you read the description. It's basically like, oh, they're funky culture, humans with tails and scales and robes.
Yeah.
There's just, dark vision. It's like they could just be elves. There's just nothing particularly special about them. I'm gonna quadruple check this, but dwarves, elves, Asaatthi, dark vision, bite attack, Slytherin with bite attack, advantage on saving throws against poison. They aged a little bit later than humans. It's keen senses, proficiency perception. Elves have that. Reptilian mind. You get advantage on saving throws against being charmed.
So it's an elf,
Elves
right?
have that. And you
Unless
have
there's
a
a
bonus to
flute being
Dex and
played.
Int. Elves have that. Yeah. They honestly, they look like elves with a couple of Slytherin traits.
Yeah.
And then reading the history, it's just, oh, they're redeemed and blah 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 blah. So yeah. Anyway,
I am hoping I see either one of us that are fairly actively creating stuff for the Solution Vault comes out with an Asaatthi option, or that because they are actively creating things for Scarlands, that they come out with a like a visual watch or something that is like, and here's an expansion on that. They did a Youngman's guide for Hollow Legionnaires, which are a new race that they were already like, and here's an alternate option for them. So hopefully we will see that in the near future.
Oh, I don't think we'll see in the near future, but in the future. I don't think we'll see it this calendar year, but maybe. So anyway, not we've lost the interest. So going back to this book, the new book, the old book, sorry, the old book, the green book, Asaatthi Life, how they were originally written, which I think is crazy neat, weird. They talk. One of the first things they say is they're reptilian but warm-blooded, and that made me go. And I want to look up my etymology on reptiles and see if reptiles can be warm-blooded.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna worry about it. But they're warm-blooded, but they have reptilian qualities. We'll just put it that way.
Huh.
They lay eggs. So they do have that. And they're diurnal, i.e., they're awake during the day. And they eat. Their diet's kind of fun. So they and I don't know how you do this as a PC, but they say they eat, so many meals a day, like usually 2 to 4 meals a day, just kind of like most people. But one of those meals will be meat. Will just be meat, and they don't care if it's raw or cooked or preserved in some way. But but they will have a meat meal. And after they eat their meat meal, they will have a nappy. And they will take
I
a
am
little
all
nap for
down
an
with
hour.
that.
And the rest of, and any other meals throughout the day will be like grains and veggies. So they're very healthy. I was just like, this is like the paleo diet for snake people. Oh, they said grains, so I guess that's not paleo. But so they're like, okay, they'll eat tubers or grain for the other, So I picture Asaatthi wakes up in the morning, has a bowl of oatmeal, brushes their whatever. Actually, they say they don't shower or bathe. I guess they don't have showers, but they don't take a bath. They rub sand all over themselves, clean. I guess that's snake consistent, so
Yeah.
that's fine. So they do that. So they have their little bowl of oatmeal. They rub sand all over. They go about their morning business, and then around lunchtime, and depending on where they are and what they do, when their big meat meal is, can happen anytime during the day, but whenever, like whether that's their breakfast, their dinner, or their lunch. They eat this, so midday they're like, I'm gonna eat an entire cow or whatever it is. They probably not a cow. Okay, that's an entire chicken. There we go. And
Whole.
then a whole chicken. Just take the feathers off and then eat the chicken. And do they have chickens in swamps? You get my
If they
point.
raise them, yes.
Yeah, and then they go nappy. They take a little nap for an hour, and then they wake up, and then they go about the rest of their day. And then in the evening, they're like, and now I will have, a baked potato.
Right.
That's what this said. I love that. I love that description. So I'm picturing the adventurer Asath who's like, we have to take a long rest now
Right,
because we've been
right,
adventuring for several hours, and I have to eat my chicken and take a nap.
right. Or
A short
most
rest.
adventurers are like,
Yeah.
oh my god, I just went through this horrible battle. I need to at least take a short rest. And the Asaathi's like, I ate my chicken. I really need to take a short rest now. Whew. Meat coma. Whew.
So that does work quite well in D&D. This just means if you have a Asaatthi in your party, you will have a midday short rest.
Right.
Everybody else gets their spells or abilities back, so it all maps. I love it. I absolutely love it. I am melting. It's so hot. I feel like I'm in the proof right now. So there's that wonderful thing. Another thing about them is they're this whole thing. This is specifically the Asath who live in the Jeweled City in the swamp. So this has been the tradition now since they kind of re-established that. So I'd say since the Leading Empire. So we're still talking a few thousand years. Is jewelry, gems, holy poop. They give gems for everything. They give jewelry for everything, and there's a meaning, and there's insults around it, and favors, and like rewards, and all of this stuff around giving and receiving and collecting jewelry, and specifically things with gems in them. And I'm like, where did they get all these gems? I mean, some of this must be like, this was my grandmother's, but like the oldest Asaatthi, like I swear they spend their lives hoarding jewelry. So when an Asaathi's born, well, actually, I'll get to how they're born later. When Asaathi's born, first thing they get is a little bracelet that's like, so little snake babies. I have a tail and two little stubby arms. Gets a little
And
bracelet, little baby bracelet. It's like, this is my mommy and daddy, so I don't get lost. Or actually, this is my mommy. I don't know who my daddy is, but this is my mommy, so I don't get lost. And amongst all the other baby snake people. And so if lost, return to Brenda. I don't know. Friends.
Brenda.
So they get this little bracelet, and then as every birthday, they get some kind of, like, mom will give them a thing, or grandma this time, or Uncle Fred, or whatever. They'll get some kind of jewelry every single birthday. And then as they turn 13, that's like their bar mitzvah. I'm not kidding. And they get like another, actually there's one at 6, and there's one at 13, and then there's one at 20. So they have kind of 3 bar mitzvahs. And those are special ages, and they get more crap those ages. And then they say, like, really old Asaatthi. So after 20, they get the big thing, and then they go off and live their lives. And then when they turn, I want to get the age right, 100, because these guys lived for a couple hundred years.
Right.
By the time they turn 100, they can't have kids anymore, so they're now considered matrons or patron. I don't know.
Is it a cultural thing, or is it a physical thing that they can't have kids after 100? Or does it?
Physical.
Okay,
There's
gotcha.
not 100. It's rough. Like basically they go into menopause.
Yeah.
Around 80, between 80 and 100 years old.
Gotcha.
I'm glad I don't have to wait that long. And then so they just start collecting. So their goal in life, like for Fridays, is like, I will have children and they will do their thing, and I will, And now I can't have children anymore. So now my new goal in life is to collect even more jewelry.
Sparklies.
So they're either like off, whether they're, some of them are obviously off, like, I'm going to be a lich lord, or I'm gonna, I'll be a general or whatever. But if your career was like, politics or staying home or whatever, your goal at that age is like, I'm going to collect as much jewelry as I possibly can. So you picture these old 200-year-old Soth matrons,
Yeah,
surrounded by like take grandma's little jewelry box and 1,000 times that. I was like, whoa.
it's funny you were saying the thing about the lich, and I'm like, I would hate to have to try and find the lich's phylactery in something like this, because they're just like, you walk into their treasure trove and it's just all phylactery possible. Fuck.
Which gem is it in?
Right?
There's 70,000 gems here. And the thing is, and like,
and I don't want to destroy it all because that's our loot if we kill it.
Yeah. But swamps aren't known for places where you mine gems.
Makes sense.
Just some gems could be artificially made.
Yeah.
Chemically made. You could magic. You can do some alchemical, magical. They're all wizards. So you could conceivably do that. But where do they, okay, every kid has gotten at least one piece of jewelry.
Yeah.
For 20 years. All right. Total non sequitur. So my grandmother, when I was born, when my cousin was born, my cousin's 4 years older, gave her a little angel ornament to put on the Christmas tree. Anyway. And then continued to do that for both my cousin and I. My cousin and I are the only two in our generation.
Yeah.
And continued to do that until I turned 18. So for 22 years, my cousin was 22 until I turned 18. So for 22 years, every year, my grandmother gave each of us a little angel.
Yeah.
So my cousin is like 22 of these, and I have 18 of these. Do you know how many angels that is? It doesn't sound like
You need like a second tree to put it on.
Oh, I did. I had I there was actually at one point where I had an angel tree, which was separate. Like my mother, when I was like a teenager or whatever, there was the Christmas tree, the regular tree, which was like all popcorn and cranberries, and
right?
Rose and whatever. And then there was the angel tree, which was this little 3-footer, which was just the angels, because of course everybody else was like, oh, Sarah collects angels, so other people would, and it's not that I collected angels, it's just that they found out I had an angel collection, so other people would, this was the thing with my grandma, but other people give me angels, and I probably today have like 50 angel ornaments. I'm not even Christian, but there you go. So I am picturing that's what it's like to be in a Asaatthi.
Yeah.
It's like, I have hundreds of jewels of little jewelry and bracelets and necklaces and brooches and rings and some of them are magic. Back in the day, during the heyday of the Empire when Mormon was still around, which is probably when this tradition began, they were magical because now it's harder. So, but every Asaatthi who's of age is going to have at least one magic jewel amongst their giant, massive jewelry collection. Not a couple of magic jewels. So, not every gem is going to be magical, but some proportion of these, even if it's just, which one is my kid? So, So there's that business, cultural thing. I thought was cool. Rolling back a little bit. So why do they need to put a bracelet on to know which kid is theirs? So this made me go like, I felt like whoever wrote this book was really into kinky fic. I just have visions of Alpha, Beta, Omega.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I don't know if you've seen the
stuff.
Venn diagram of role players, LARPers, and kink.
Kink. It's there.
It's a fairly large overlap. Yeah.
This is all there. I can tell you this. This is all there. I'm almost embarrassed to read this bit because it's just amazing. So, female, and the whole female male, which irritated me to no end, but anyway, female Asaatthi, as a rule, go into heat twice a year. Okay, and there's a whole description of like when the weather and like what triggers it and all this stuff, and it's annoyingly complicated. It has to do with the weather and if it rained or whatever. It's basically once in the spring and once in the late summer, early fall.
Gotcha.
Ish, depending if they're in the swamps or the desert or wherever they live. And when as they go into heat, the women get the choice because they kind of run the show here, of which men they will choose as their mate this time, which implies lack of monogamy on the part of the Asaatthi.
Yeah.
In fact, if anything, I would say it's a reverse harem, and that every female Asaatthi of clout has many husbands. Of clout.
I don't recall even seeing anything about.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, finish.
I just got like an internet lag catch-up thing.
Saying anything about marriage, you mean?
Yeah, so I don't remember seeing anything about marriage specifically. So maybe it's they don't even, and this is really their pool of breeders as opposed to like life mates or even like necessarily romantic interests. They may not even care.
And it's apparent that not all, at least if you're in the culture and not, run off and done your own thing, but if you're living in the culture of the original book, of the Swamps of Cantet area and Jewel City area, if you're living in this culture, you're part of this culture, only certain women are even allowed to breed. If you're found to be genetically deficient, if you're other things, you're not allowed to breed. But also account for this, they're all rich. Like, there's a working class, but there isn't really a poverty class among the Asaatthi. Because they're all wizards. They all, the poor is the slaves. Like, they don't, they do have castes, I'll get into that in a bit, but they are clans, they call them basically castes. But there's no lower caste.
Yeah.
Those are the slaves and so they in terms of the day-to-day work, that's done by humans and lizard men and whatever they have.
Whatever happened to come into the swamp that day.
When I come in the swamp, we put a chain around and said, you're going to go take out the trash.
The interview process is really short, though. You showed up, you're hired.
You're hired. Did we kill you? No, okay. My trash now. So like all of them are basically nobles in some degree. So the women is like, okay, you must not be sick and you must genetically or whatever, and not have already some of the women are like, I'm not gonna do this. I don't know what if you're going into heat, you're like, how do you be like, no, I don't want to have kids. How that, like, do they have a soft birth control? They're wizards.
I was going to say
yes.
They're or sorcerers. Yeah, they're magic.
They must have magic. Wizardry.
It's a cantrip.
So
it's just not in the book because that cantrip would not go over well.
Totally off topic, but I did hand wave this Invigilant to say, like, go visit a cleric and they'll give you the don't get pregnant pill, or don't get pregnant.
Herbs, tonic, whatever.
Herbs, tonic, amulet, I don't know, something. It was I hand waved it, like, go see a cleric. And that was it. That's all.
Right.
Go see the cleric. They'll fix it, so you don't have to worry. So anyway, so they pick their who they're going to make, and it's like a bunch of guys. So it's like, you six, come with me. I'm kidding. But sometimes the matriarchy is like, these are the six you will choose, Derry. And the young blossoming Asaatthi woman will be like, thank you, grandmother. Yes, these are the six I will choose. So it's not always I get to pick. Sometimes great grandma decides for
Yeah.
you. But you take the 4 to 6 gentlemen, and you go off in a room for 2 days. Saturating. This is the part I was like, somebody wrote fan fiction around this one.
Right.
So, and it gets me, it's like, so this is like late medieval technological level.
Right.
But these are snake people, so, you know, they have woven fabric, they have teleportation, they have instant communication, they have hand wave magic. They create these nests out of sand and straw, and I'm thinking, pretty high tech. Why don't you have feather beds, really?
So let me ask you this: when Mormo made them, does it state they were raised from snakes, or was she like, you are a snake person?
It does not specify, but she's
Because
made of snakes.
like
so...
the oh, my mind just blanked them. The Manticora people, Manticora. The Manticora,
yeah.
they were lions that Vangal said, become a humanoid, and they did. Which would lead me to believe they still have like an instinct.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
like
so,
snakes would like create nests and like bedding, you know, and stuff. But if, I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of years after being raised up.
Yeah.
I could see them making beds now. Be like, hey, I don't
like,
want to lay in straw anymore, right?
There's a bowl of water and some food and sand and straw, and I was like, they don't have really nice silk pillows,
right?
Because that's what I was picturing. But sure, whatever.
Or they just go in and like lay on their pile of jewelry, you know, something.
That would be very comfortable. There's a jewelry over there. But like all the men come in. Here's the jewelry for the mating ceremony. Here's another one. But there is a thing. I will also say that they do make this giant emphasis of tradition. And one of the things I say about the Asaatthi language, it is the closest. When you look at all the languages of the various sentient races in Skarn, Titan spawn or otherwise, the Asaatthi language is the closest to the original language they spoke when they were born.
Yeah.
Thousands of years ago than any other race.
And this is probably also the heaviest book that I've looked at that has, so like we talked about last time, they have a lexicon. They're actually like, here's the the dictionary for Asaatthi, the language. But like there are so many words throughout that it's just like, and this is this ritual and this is what this means, and I'm like, holy crap. You got to remember a lot of stuff.
This tie to tradition, it could just be we do use sand and straw because we've always used sand and straw, and forget silky feather pillows, we use sand and straw. So there you go. So sand and straw, and the 4 to 6 gentlemen and the lady basically writhe, because you have to throw the word writhe because it's a rule, and twine about for 2 days.
Yeah. But where does nappy time come into that?
Presumably they break to eat their chicken and take a nap.
I need a short rest. Hang on.
Short rest, long rest. Well, that's why it takes 2 days. So 2 days they're doing the thing, and then she kicks them out. All right, gentlemen, get out. And then the other ladies come in, and they do this in shifts. So like not every woman is doing all this in the same week or whatever. So it'll be like some percentage get this week, and because otherwise society would break down if every single woman and 5 dudes were doing the do for, you know. So it'll be like these, and like it's a political thing, who gets to go first.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Like all this shuffling is like, well, who gets to breed, you know?
Yeah.
Who gets to take the 2 weeks off and presumably the gentlemen are there for the 2 days, and then they go and find another lady because there's the population presumably is still kind of 50-50 ratio. So some of these the really prized gents are like in a queue.
Yeah.
And it makes me think is like this guy's with these 4 guys this time and maybe these other 4 or 5 guys this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Even if it's not a 50-50 ratio, like because they are selective breeding, because they are like only these are the ones you get to choose from, that's a really small ratio of men to the women that are breeding, and those guys got to be tired by the end of that.
Yeah, because you figure over the course of this month,
Right?
when all as the women sequentially go in heat or however it works, you know, presumably you can hold it off or whatever. It's like, well, I can do it tomorrow. You know? So over the course of this kind of month in the spring, I'll, you know, every couple of days and whatever. So she kicks the dudes out and then spends the next. Oh, I'm gonna get the timing right. Go it down.
Just gonna say that is a lot of
It's
rising.
a few days.
A lot.
Yeah, it's a few days, and she lays the eggs. Female others. 2 days of mating, and then she lays the eggs. And then once the eggs are laid, she's like, okay, good, done. You know, so it takes a few days, and she lays the eggs. And then the eggs are basically taken care of by the matrons who do that. And they know the moms know which one's theirs, but you don't know which is the dad.
Yeah.
Because they were with a bunch of dads, and presumably some eggs are from that dad and some eggs are from that. Who know? I don't know.
Yeah.
But they're considered part of the same clutch, so they're considered, you know, clutch siblings. And then when they're born, they get the little bracelets so that later, because all these kids, from to the age of 6, I think it's age of 6. Yeah, to about 6, they live in the breeding grounds. So each city will have, like, each town will have some kind of breeding grounds. Presumably the one in the Jeweled City is the big one. And that's where the breeding happens, and that's where the kids are taken care of. So they'll, like, bring the eggs hatch, they bring them to where the kids hang out, and the kids just hang out together. And, like, and they sleep in big clumps together. And they just do everything together. Until they're about 6. And they're basically there's not much instruction going on at that point. They're just sort of taught to, you know, don't beat each other up and eat the food, and here's how to speak the language, and here's a little bit of reading and math, but most of it's just that. They're cared for by the community, and kind of the only other thing is that those, and each year they get a new jewel. So, like, I have 6 jewels at my 6th birthday, and on their 6th birthday is kind of their first, like, you can leave the breeding grounds now. And at that point, they start teaching them magic. So at 6 years old, they're like, now we're going to teach you prestidigitation. It's like, wow. And then from 6 to 13 is basically their primary education. And they usually go off and live with grandma or their family at that point. So they leave the breeding ground and they go back to live with their family and tribe or whatever it is. And it's a total communal thingy. So, and each family will have their own individual how they want to do its schooling. So each family will do it. It's every family does the basics, math and reading and magic. But what history you learn and what other stuff you learn is going to depend on what that family decides to teach you. So, and that's where I kind of can imagine, like, these were rangers, so they were taught nature stuff. These were druids, so they were taught druid stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever. I go by classes. And then at 13, they're considered adults. But what's interesting is they're not considered mating age. They're just considered you're done with schooling age.
Yeah.
And at that point, the big, like I said, the bar mitzvah kind of thing. And then they get a whole. This is where the jewelry collection really comes into play, because up until now, every birthday it's been like one from mom and one from grandma or one from Uncle Fred. And then at 13, it's like now everybody gives them shit. It's like, so I had 13 jewels, now I have 50.
Right. Exponentially, it just grows.
And what's fun is they said some of the jewels will be like, you know, for bravery, you know, you did a very good job in the thing. Or because you're a douche, I'm going to give you this thing that you have to wear all the time with this douche on it, you know.
Here is your participation jewelry.
They'll really do that. And they were like, you can't refuse them, and you have to use them.
So you can't be like, I don't want to wear the douche medal. Gotcha.
Yeah, you have to wear the douche medal. Yeah. So it's like, It's like you have to. It's an insult if you don't use it, but
Right.
it's also like an insult that they gave you this thing. So it'd be like cousin Matilda, who we used to fight all the time in preschool, gave me an amulet made of tin that has the symbol on it that means stupid, and I have to put it on my clothes or whatever. I don't know what it is. An earring, and I'm like, this 13-year-old snake folks like just bogged down in jewelry. How does this work? So that happens, and then it basically from 13 to 20. By the time they're 20, they're like, I can hear Fran laughing from what I said just a second ago. So 13 to 20, they go off and they figure out what they're going to do for their career, and at 20 they're truly adults. 20 they can breed, and at that point they've presumably got their shit together enough to go have a career or whatever. So I guess 13 to 20 is like their apprenticeships and traditional thing, but the age of adulthood is 20. And at that point, the rules for that teenage years, they can get away with a lot. But actually no, that's backward. No, they can't get away with shit. They can get away with a lot until they're 13, and then they're like, "You did bad. I'm gonna punish you." But the punishments are entertaining because they don't really punish Asaatthi unless you did something really heinous. So it'd be like, you were a jerk to Bob, so I'm gonna make you go help the maid clean the poop. You know, that kind of stuff. But yeah, and then I already talked about old age and the giant jewelry collection. I kind of covered all of that. Then I'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, that's kind of the basics. Education is interesting because all of them, and again in the swamps of Campeche Cities area, they kind of burn into their brains this moral structure. And again, reading this, it doesn't feel particularly lawful evil or neutral evil or evil society to me. It just feels very regimented. Lawful, yeah, but this doesn't feel like okay, we worship Mormo, we want Mormo back, but this doesn't feel like, I mean, it does because they have slaves and they're kind of rich assholes, but but it's interesting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this is and so much of this book, go back to the history of the book a little bit. Oriental Adventures had just come out.
Yeah.
035 or 30, no, which one? I actually played an OA campaign around this time too, which is kind of interesting. And played a Shugenja with blue hair. And they
Oh, we lost Sarah. Sarah, where did you go? I have no idea where she was going with this. There she is.
I know.
Welcome back.
About,
This was one of those times where I was like, crap, I don't know where she was going. I can't continue the speech.
Oh. Despite not running Twitch, it still crashed.
It happens.
Yeah, sorry. It's once an episode, it tells me. It's like, yeah. So, where was I going? Oh, right, Oriental Adventures. So, somehow, Sword and Sorcery worked with, was Wizards of the Coast? Yeah, Wizards of the Coast. I don't know if they were Hasbro yet, but they were certainly Wizards of the Coast. Got this deal where they're like, can we, because at this point it was OGL, the early 303X OGL, and they got the rights to actually reference stuff from Oriental Adventures book, which wasn't, as far as I know, part of the original open license. So they got the rights to leverage those contents.
Yeah.
They talk about samurai and kensai and shugenja and all those other things.
And you'll note, so like you can't see because you don't have it up, but like a lot of the art for these have a very kind of Japanese style feel to them. The guy that's up right now, I guess I should assume the character that's on screen is, has this like very kimono feeling robe on with this.
And robe's map for I have a giant tail and digitigrade legs.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, I would not want to wear
it's,
pants as
no,
an Asath. No.
no. No. So it does map, but yeah. So they got the rights to that, and so there's a ton. There's all these classes in this book of like that totally reflect stuff that was happening in the Orange Adventure book that came out around the same era. Um, so there's certainly kind of this sort of push to get East Asian, particularly Japanese, concepts into the culture without being overtly obvious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, can I put it? It's to me, it's actually more obvious in Strange Lands, where they talk about the dragon
Yeah. The
folk.
Dragonlands are
They're like,
very
it's a
Asian.
samurai.
Yeah.
They don't pretend that it isn't Japanese.
Right. Like they
This
do
is like,
say, so this is a dragon blade, and there's a picture of a katana, and this is,
yeah. Yeah, like they're not even pretending.
Right.
But this is like, yeah, they're kind of pretending. And it's not too overt. But there is this concept that to me sounded very kind of Japanese nobility-ish influence, I'd say. It's not a direct ripoff, but I'm not Japanese, so somebody who knows about Japanese culture might completely go, yes, it's totally a ripoff. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just know there was an influence here. So they have these concepts called Kinesh, Aniku, and Ilohepe. And I'm pronouncing words in Asaatthi, so...
Right.
I'm pronouncing words in a made-up language.
If you got it wrong, oh well.
Made-up language. No one should complain. Unless
Right.
this is based on a real language's words, and I don't recognize these words, so... They're based on a real language. Someone else can correct me. But Kinesh is honor, and I think, I don't know, immediately I hear honor, I think either Klingons or Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Right.
Zuko running around going, my honor, So definitely, immediately you get that vibe. But they're like, no, it's subtler than that.
Yeah.
It's about decisive action and discipline. And the whole concept around Kinesh is you decide now. No dithering, no indecisiveness. You are firm, and this is the thing.
Right. Yeah, it's dishonorable to like sit around and be like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's cowardly to Em and Ha. Like, that is the worst thing in this culture. You must make a decision now, and and whether it's good or wrong, it doesn't matter. What matters is you've decided now.
Right.
Which I'm just like, I would make a terrible Asaatthi. I'm like so indecisive. What flavor ice cream you want? No. I can't order in a restaurant. I could never be an Asaatthi. Terrible. And it comes from the spiritual concept of the Titans, where earthquakes aren't decisive; they just happen. Landslides aren't decisive. Rainstorms aren't decisive. It's like, okay, sure, we'll go with that. So indecisive or rekench. Meekness is considered dishonorable, and like you showed meekness. No breeding for you. That's trait number 1, or concept number 1. Concept number 2 is enieku, necessity, like consciousness. It guides what's to be done for survival. So necessity, breeding is a necessity, working as a community is a necessity, getting food is a necessity. This counterpoints Kinesh, the honor, because it describes why something must be done. So make the decision, but why are you making that decision? It means the community must work together. It may limit the honor if you have to consider before making a decision, because you have to determine what is best for the community. So you're allowed to be indecisive if you're gathering information to determine what's best for the community. That's like your exception to the decisiveness of honor. And people, of course, use that against people all the time. And then finally, there's Ilohepe, which means insight, or literal transition in the land of the south, bright eyes. Because snakes are known for bright eyes, I think. It's a fundamental requirement of understanding the world. The Asaatthi, as sentient beings, are gifted awareness, sentience, and they gain wisdom from their experiences. So the knowledge they gain through experiences impact how and why they make decisions. So you put these three things together, the honor, decisiveness, the necessity, and the insight, and that creates the Akeshu, or true being, which is combining all three principles. I think that was really neat. This is like somebody put work into this.
Yeah.
This is cool.
You could definitely tell that somebody sat down and was like, I am going to flesh the crap out of this race.
Yeah, this is really neat stuff.
Yeah.
So, and they talk about, because, again, this is society's full of political machinations and whatnot. There's like, so when you're deceiving others, you're balancing honor and insight. When you're working and coordinating with others, you're balancing necessity and insight.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was like kind of.
It definitely removes, because like when you think, like you said, when you think of races that are like honor, you have to have honor. Klingons would never like be like, I'm going to deceive you honorably. You know what I mean? That's not a thing. Whereas these guys are like, really, the honor in me deceiving you is the fact that I'm like jumping into it. You know, I'm going to do this with all of my being. So honorable.
Yeah. And like in war, no dishonor comes from retreat, because if they lose more by fighting,
right,
that would ruin it. That would go against the necessity and the insight.
Right.
So you always have to be balancing these three. So wanton conflict, there's no point. That doesn't help anybody. You don't fight. So barbarianism amongst them would be rare.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, you can always choose to play whatever class, but it like coming into playing an Asaatthi with their background, I would never be like, oh, I'm playing a barbarian, because it just doesn't make cultural sense.
Culturally, you'd be a wizard or a druid.
Right, sorcerer. Yeah.
Maybe a sorcerer, ranger, warlock. All of those fit. Cleric now, probably. I don't know what god. Chardoon, maybe. Or one of the demigods. But yeah, so there's all that. And that's neat.
Yeah.
I think that's really... I'd love to see that in the new one. And of course, the magic. Like, so kids from that I said that from 13 to 20, you know, what happens to them. And this is they get taught, that gets ingrained into their being. So basically, 13 to 20 is high school. And it's like, you're an adult now, but you're not allowed to do anything yet, because now we have to teach you all about honor and unity and community and insight, and you have no insight because you're a kid, so we're going to teach you this stuff now.
Right.
13, 20, but also during that time they're taught the mystic arts and magic and potentially military. They're inclined to that. And magic. It's interesting that magic is in every set. Magic's more important than the jewelry thing. It's in everything they do. They said from hygiene to military. What shows up from hygiene? I got dirty. Prestidigitation.
Right.
So they use magic everywhere. Everybody, like, the most important thing you own is your spellbook. So Asaatthi don't have wizard colleges because
they just grow up with it, right?
Yeah.
Like you may have a spellbook that's very reminiscent of your relatives that are teaching you these things, and therefore you might learn more of one school than another. But you're not like heading off to Hogwarts to learn magic.
No. Yeah, so like, okay, my family were all necromancers, so I'm learning necromancy.
Right.
My family were all diviners, or that's what I'm learning. But that's it. That's kind of going to be the thing. And it's like, well, I don't want to be a necromancer. Well, go fine, work with Lucy. She's a evoker. Yeah. Whatever. Lucy, sorry.
But if you're not a necromancer, how will you get the slaves to stand up again after they die?
Yeah.
I mean, what?
And don't tell me necromancy is to be huge with these people, particularly the ones who live in the desert. You know, all led by everything by liches. So, all that cultural stuff, not even touched.
Yeah.
now. But I don't think it contradicts the new lore either. I think you can still do the yeah, we follow the gods, but you're all still learning magic or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think that's neat.
You know, as a culture that literally chose, we're going to go down this road and have a bunch of us turn into liches to watch over us, I would say they absolutely have no qualms about necromancy as a culture.
Oh, no.
I mean, it's not like, going to the Bridge City and people will be all like, "Why do you have a zombie? That's creepy and get out of here." And if you went into, the Lost City, people would be like, "Where's your zombie?"
I don't know if they'd be like, "Where's your zombie?" But they'd be like, "Oh, zombies!
Yeah.
Good on you!"
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be like, "Where's your house servant?" Whether it's because as I said before, there really isn't a okay. And I mentioned getting into the Asaatthi breeds. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 breeds. Wow, that's almost as many as the Slytherin.
Right.
Except they're not like the Slytherin with that giant diversity. They're all made by Mormos. They don't have any.
Right.
The diversity isn't like anything to that level. It's more cultural. Oh, I didn't even get into the clans. Yeah, go back and talk about the clans before I talk about the breeds because they totally feed into each other. So there's 3 clans that everything's kind of branched off of. At least in the Jeweled City, there's mention that there probably were more clans later,
Gotcha.
before the hibernation and all that
Right.
business. But it's been down to 3 now for a long time. And this was like, and someone watched Babylon 5, and we're really into the Minbari. I think honestly, anytime there's 3 of something mentioned like this, I always go back to Babylon 5 and the Minbari because it's just like so classic. There's the Utek, the warriors, concerned with honor. So those guys must be decisive. The Mormos, like Mormo, the Druids, who are concerned with philosophy and religion, and the spirituality, metaphysics. Long back in the day, they used to be ascetic. Now they're like, more jewelry for us! Just like every other Asaatthi. And they're super excess and affluence and all those things, because they're rich mofos. And then finally there's the Caalek, Caallek.
Sure.
And they're the commoners, everybody else. And they've embraced neo-nationalism in the original book. The new book, I don't know. I don't know how that would fit in. But they're basically concerned more with basically community and doing the right thing over there with honor and religion, which puts them at odds with the religious guys, but actually they tend to be on the same side as the warriors a lot of the time. So, and I'm just like, this is completely Minbari, because Minbari had 3 castes: the religious caste, the warrior caste, and the worker caste, they called it. And I'm just like, this is it.
Right.
It's literally, I call them clans, not castes, but it's the same, basically. You can't change clan, so it's a caste.
Yeah.
How is this different? Or can you? I don't know, maybe you can. It is actually said one way or another where you can change them. So this is, class system is relatively new. It's only been since about 3000 OC, so it's been 700 years that they've had 3, which sounds like a long time, but when you consider the age of the Asaatthi in general,
yeah,
it's not really that long. And their old structure, when there were way more than 3, kind of still exists as families, but really only the warrior clan cares, and because most of the royals, the super nobles, come from that clan, and some of the desert folk care, but in general most people just deal with those 3. So those 3 different clans really push what direction you're going to go in your schooling, whether you're going to be a druid, or whether you're going to be a warrior, or whether you're going to be everything else.
Yeah.
But everybody's a wizard, doesn't matter. You're a druid wizard, you're a fighter wizard,
you're a blacksmith wizard. Yeah.
You're a blacksmith wizard. It doesn't matter. I love the idea of blacksmith wizards, and I make you a magic sword. But there, as I said before, all the lower class, there isn't one. So in terms of the breeds, there's pureborn, which are there's 3 breeds of pureborn. The guys who live in the swamp, the guys who live in the desert, and the desert the guys who live in the swamp, the urban desert guys, and the nomad desert guys. Fundamentally, rules-wise, they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's cultural difference, not a physiological difference. And back in this book, it was a +5 level adjustment. There you go. And they were 3rd level wizards starting off. So when you're fighting Asaatthi back in the day, and even now, they're going to be a spellcaster. It's going to be like a fireball and then hit you with my sword. Kind of thing. And then the next one is the River Dwellers, which presumably is in the swamps. They're slightly derpier. What makes them different is during the Great Sleep, some of the Asath woke up because I think Gulliban went horny. And they woke up and wandered about a bit instead of going back into hibernation. And so they're a little different. They didn't necessarily continue to sleep, but they're pretty low numbers. They look a little different. They're a little bit more frog-like. Like they've got webbing between their fingers. So they're a little funkier.
If you're looking at the breed art, I feel like there's like 2 darker, kind of like mottled skinned that are on the left. It's like the one on the right of those 2 because you could even see the webbing between its fingers.
Yeah.
So
I think the 2 in the back are desert guys.
Yeah.
And then the one on the far left is your swamp purebred.
Yeah.
And the one right next to him with the skirt-looking thing and the forked tail.
Yeah.
Funky tail, spiky tail. Not forked. Spiky tail is probably your swamp dude, your river dude. Then there's this one called the Infiltrator. And again, during the Great Sleep, there was an earthquake on one of the cities, one of the enclaves, and so a bunch of guys kind of got woken up prematurely. A bunch of people died, but a bunch of people sort of wandered off, trying to survive, and they bred with humans.
Which is probably where we get this other derpy-looking guy.
Which is where they get the weird one that looks kind of human.
Yeah.
And most of the other Asaatthi are like, what did you do?
Yeah.
That's like the worst thing to have done.
And how?
Yeah. Doing it with a dog, from their perspective.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
They think it's just truly horrifying. So they look kind of like humanoids, slightly serpentine features. And yet they still have a +4 level adjustment. You think these would have the least amount of level adjustment? Dark vision, whatever. Nope. It's also in the stats too, so it's really an unnecessary level. I guess they can. Oh, they can shift between human form and snake form. They have a polymorph.
Interesting.
Pseudo polymorph. Adult Sahuet can turn themselves into any medium humanoid and back and back again. Okay, so I'm gonna be an elf today.
Yeah, they're
so that's
kind of doppelganger-y.
Yeah, but they have to kind of stay in that form for a really long time, so it's not like they can just shift every day.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm going to be a dwarf for the next 2 months.
Let's see how that side lives. Oh god, this is horrid.
And then we've got our misbred, which I'm going to say is the one that probably... So one of these is the one that looks like a human, the other one's the one that looks like an orc.
Yeah.
Misbred is the result of Asaatthi mating with other races. Mostly born from the previous guys I just talked to that can shape change. The children of them who bred with yet another race. So again, the purity of the Asaatthi is draining.
Yeah.
And they resemble the non-Asath parent more strongly than Asath ancestor. So it's less Asath and more deep in the blood.
Yeah.
And I think this is the one that looks like a human amongst the breed, or looks humanish amongst the breeds. Misbred often use disguises to conceal their weird traits, and they can sometimes even be mistaken for lizard folk. I think misbred often use disguises to conceal their traits. I can't even say it. Luhulates, which is the same misbred, often with lizard folk or troglodyte ancestry. It's hard to identify unless one is quite familiar with those races. So presumably it's an Asaatthi who bred with like a human who then bred with a troglodyte.
Because why not?
Ugh, okay. That's a thing. Or something. I don't know. Anyway, the Asaatthi blood is really diluted, and they only get a +2 level adjustment, but they're still flipping wizards.
Yeah.
And then finally, as I already mentioned, the lowest ones, which are came out wrong, and who knows what their ancestry is, and they're considered kind of offensive. They're still above slaves because, well, some Asaatthi were. It's not clear if they're because of inbreeding or breeding with other races or whatever.
Yeah.
Magic gone awry, or all of the above.
Too much writhing, too little writhing.
Too much writhing right over a curse. But they're sort of people are sort of clumped in there. So your breed is so much as the nature of where you were born as, because you could be of the desert nomads.
Yeah.
Move to the city. Would your kids be desert nomad breed, or would they now be the desert urban breed?
That's a good question. Yeah.
So is that because genetically there's not really much difference between those between the three pureblood breeds.
Right.
It doesn't even feel like a breed to me. It just feels like a social construct.
Yeah.
But the
absolutely.
other ones, it's definitely about genetics. So the concept of playing a half or quarter or whatever part Asath, totally doable in this stuff. So I had a snake. My great grandmother was a snake person. I love it. So, yeah.
Here's the memory orb on how that worked.
Oh, we didn't talk about. Did we talk about those last time?
We did talk about the memory orbs. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of mention of those. That's kind of the culture breeds. I didn't say much about the desert guys. But they're in both books. They're bring back Mormo. And there's this book has a whole bunch of spells and magic items and feats and all this stuff you normally find in a 3.5 book. Prestige classes. None of which apply to 5e.
They definitely did some of the spell conversions, like Encode Thought is in there.
Encode Thought is cool.
Yeah, it's a fun spell.
Yeah, that's neat because they have those crystals, which is how they survived the Great Sleep. Is they're like all the memory in the crystal, and so finding one of these cool crystals would be neat, and then you could put a whole plot around that.
Right.
There is one other thing that and this is super spoilery, so anybody who's going to play the adventure at the back, stop watching for a bit. I ran this adventure, and like I said, a billion years ago, and I can't really remember the deeds anymore, but it goes into, basically you end up going into where the Asaatthi were sleeping under the swamps of Cantet as part of the adventure. And what's wild is that it deals with Slaracian stuff. They don't make no harms or fuss about it. And you end up going through a gate into what is effectively another dimension. And the concept of all these hibernating snake folk, you're in, it felt like a video game to me when I ran it. I was like, I'm playing a level of Diablo.
Yeah.
I was like, I felt like I've went through those woo gates, and now I'm in the hell dimension. Except it was, Or one of those dimensions, or one of those video games of the early aughts. Whatever it was around this. And you deal with kind of this combination of old Asaatthi magic tempered with Thracian artifact. And it's not clear in the adventure where it comes from, other than there's an interest. And you're balancing the fact that both the Vigils of Vesh and the Calastians want in on this shit. Because the Calastians have sent a bunch of battle mages in and go be like, what is that? And the Vigils of Vesh are like, what are the Calastians up to? What is that?
What is that?
So you've got Asaatthi investigating it, you've got the Vigils investigating it, you've got the Calastians investigating it, and this whole thing comes into play in this sort of extra-dimensional space that they end up going to, where you run around a dungeon very briefly. It's like, let's deal with the, because the plot's really about dealing with the Vigils in the South and the other factions in that, more so than the discovery of the stuff. And I think you find a MacGuffin in them, and I think I put my MacGuffin there instead. Like, I needed a place for a MacGuffin, here it goes. And that was kind of the thing. But I thought it was a cool explanation for this sort of hibernating spaces, that it isn't just that it's underground, but there's some interdimensional shit going on too, which maps both what the Thracians did, because think about the Underdark.
Yeah.
As a concept in, I want to say, not so current D&D, because I'm not quite sure what current D&D does with the Underdark so much, but certainly what D&D was doing in the odds. It was meant to be another dimension. Like, you would go into the old dwarven ruin, and you keep going down, and suddenly you kind of space shifts and morphs a little bit, and suddenly you're somewhere else. And you didn't go across through a gate, and you didn't teleport, and you didn't plane shift, but the Underdark, because the idea of these massive, vast underground caverns wouldn't fit. You'd hit magma. It doesn't work out. But in Garn, while the Underdark isn't necessarily another dimension in that same sense, it is still. It kind of is. And I just hand wave out of Thracians did it. That's my explanation. So when it came time to where did the Asaatthi go when they hibernated, it's not that the Thracians, but I think they leveraged Thracian look and created their little hibernation palaces underground as a sort of extra-dimensional spaces originally constructed by the Thracians that they just sort of discovered. And those ancient of the South were so powerful, they could change the weather on the entire continent.
Right.
They were so ridiculously powerful that it is no question to me that they could have figured out how to use a Thracian artifact or six. So that's my thought in that.
Yeah.
Kind of random explanation. But anyway, so I just want to touch base on that, like, weird little adventure.
Yeah. So I think the only other thing in here that I want to bring up, because it's one of those things that touches on their concepts, and I think it leans really heavily into that warrior class, are that there's a variant rule later in the book, like after the feats and everything, where it talks about you can have weapon familiars. So these are like weapons. I feel like it's really the warrior class that embraces this, but like weapons are more than tools. They're more than treasures. So you're not just like out searching for this stuff to be like, hey, look, I got a sword. They're like things that are handed down throughout generations, and throughout those generations they build up power. It's like a mystical energy, not necessarily like a sorcerer kind of thing, but it is like a magical energy that builds up as they're handed down. And they even have a word, they call it the Yai Tansath, or soul of my ancestors, and it essentially makes your weapon awakened like a druid would awaken an animal, and it allows you to have all of this cool shit as, and it again going into that concept that all of the warriors are also magic. This is really like that that rule side of things where they can be like, I'm a warrior, but check out my fucking magic, you know?
Well, and it kind of, to me, it maps. So in 5th edition, we have our what do you call it?
The Eldritch Knight.
Well, no, I don't mean the class, but when you cast a spell, you don't want to deal with spell components. You have a
focus.
Focus.
Yeah.
Was it just focus?
Yeah.
I was trying to remember. I thought there was a word for it. But instead of it being a wand or a staff, it's your sword.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this aligns beautifully to 5th edition.
Yeah.
I mean, 5th edition simplifies it crazy, but 5th edition simplifies almost everything. Minimum grapple rules, but yeah, you could just take your arcane focus. That's what. So completely agree, and this makes for an easy transition as to being one of those spellcaster, you know.
Yeah.
Eldritch Knight or Blade Singer. You know, I think there should be an Asaatthi Blade Singer.
Yeah. I mean, there are like the classes in here for the Asaatthi, but I don't feel like any of them really touch the Blade Singer in that concept that you're talking about.
There should be something
absolutely, yeah,
like the Blade Singer.
Yeah.
I mean, that there's a huge opportunity there for 5th edition to create a Blade Singer equivalent, not map it 1-to-1, but that can do what a Blade Singer can do basically,
right,
as an Asaatthi fighter. To be like, oh, I'm a fighter I'm a wizard, but I can go into arcane stuff and I have a bonus on my concentration checks
right,
to not lose my spells, and I am still relatively badass in combat. Hi, I'm playing a Blade Singer in a game, can you tell? So, because Blade Singers in 5e, you have to be an elf.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And I think having an Asaatthi equivalent just makes sense.
Oh yeah.
So if I was running Hardlands, I would totally let you be an Asaatthi Blade Singer and maybe tweak it a little bit in terms of the lore, and maybe a little bit in terms of the powers, but as a rule, I think it would matter, really. You know, maybe you're not singing, maybe you're something elsing.
Right.
Honestly, the singing never made sense to me. It's like, I'm not a bard.
right.
But instead of gaining proficiency perform, you have something else. But proficiency, I've studied a lot. There's the history or something. But yeah, I think it would totally make sense. Or an Eldritch Knight or something new.
Yeah.
Some kind of new warrior caster.
Like this is something, this whole weapons familiar thing is something that I want to set up for Celestial Vault, but like if someone else were to beat me to it, I would not be sad as long as it was like true to the original in feel and concept. Because you know, as Sarah knows, we all have our hands full of shit.
Yeah,
but
I mean, the reason
that
I've
being
finished
said,
the Slytherin book is because I've been working on 17 other titles.
Right.
I still have to write the sequel to Vigilant, man.
Yeah, get up on that. What are you doing?
And have I mentioned that I have a day job that actually pays the bills?
You stop it with your excuses.
I know.
So, I think we should
we need other people to write this stuff.
Right. That's probably time for this week, but do you have any other last minute bits that we missed or that you want to throw out there?
It's just I'm still disappointed that they changed so much, and I want to go back and reinsert some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Even if it contradicts the SLPG, I think it's neat and worth it.
Yeah.
Does the Jeweled City stay good and redeemed and allied? I think that ship has sailed. I don't think we can suddenly turn them into Marmites.
Right.
But I think we can pull some of this lore back into the Jeweled City. And
absolutely. You know, like there's nothing wrong with the idea that the city from the outside looks like it's aligned with these things because the ruling faction is, but that does not mean that the entirety of the population is that way. In fact, the minority that rules might be the only people that feel that way. And you know what I mean? So as a DM, use it how you need to.
Out and going, you're going to the desert.
Right.
But Swamps is a big place.
Yeah, it's so huge.
Even if they've kicked everybody out of the Jeweled City.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean there aren't more worshippers out there in the rest of the swamps.
Right.
States.
Right.
Provinces or whatever they're called. I'm sure there I'm sure there are. Yeah. So totally. I suspect though they've kicked them all out of the Jeweled City. If you're still in Mormon in the Jeweled City, you're hiding.
Yeah, at least if you're an open worshiper, totally could see that.
Yeah.
You don't want them coming to get you.
This is 600 miles.
It's huge.
I said
huge.
500-600 miles of area.
Right.
So, yeah. And there's a big sound in the middle of it too.
Yeah. The what's it called? Hang on. Do. Liar's sound.
Yeah. So, but it also makes the terrain between Shelzar and Fangsfall way less dangerous. But there you go. Yeah. So that's
Wait,
fun.
why is it less dangerous? Oh, because
you don't have to worry about you only have to worry about the crocodiles.
Gotcha. I'm like, I'm not sure I would call it not dangerous, but I see what you mean.
Yeah. Well, before
culturally speaking,
Asaatthi are going to come and
right.
enslave you. Now it's just the crocodiles are going to eat you.
Yeah.
The trolls are going to get you.
I was going to say, there's nothing
hey,
saying.
Asaatthi, can you help us out from these crocodiles?
Right.
Okay.
There's nothing saying that the trogs that live in there are not like still going to come kill you and all of that. There's plenty of danger in there, but. Yeah, like the new ruling faction might be like, yeah, we'll come save. Okay, we'll come save you.
Yeah, like I just imagine Asaatthi safe trade routes going across the swamps now.
Totally.
Which makes Fangsfall less isolated.
Yeah.
So.
You said one last point.
That was.
Oh, that's it.
I'm just babbling now. I'm just.
Okay. Well, go ahead and do your outro. Tell us all about yourself, Sarah.
Still Sarah Stewart. Working on tons of stuff for the Scarred Lands. Wrote this thing like 1 billion years ago. Like 2 years ago.
1 billion or 2.
2. And trying to work on the sequel. Someday I'll get back to that. But instead, in lieu of that, working on a whole bunch of titles for the Zlaracian Vault. One of which will be coming out very soon.
Yay!
You can find me on morelikethisindustries.com is my website, or probably best on Discord these days. Ketina number 6065.
Sweet. And I am Jeremy Hochhalter. I really need to like type up my outro because I'm always like, wait, what do I do? Who am I? I run this here channel. On Fridays we do this show, The Lore You Know, still focusing on Scarred Lands until we get through it, which will be like 2 or 3 years from now. Who knows? It might not be that long. We'll have a special episode next week. Can't tell you what it is until it comes out next week, but we will talk about it then. And on Friday afternoons at 4:30 p.m., I host the Curiosity Cache, which is a actual play D&D 5th edition game set in Scarred Lands, specifically Shelzar. So come check that out. On Mondays, we play in Travis Lake's game over at Plastic Age Plays. Scarred Lands, A Family Affair, which is not as... I was going to say it's not as weird as it sounds, but it is as weird as it sounds. So, yeah.
But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's totally fun. And then Wednesdays at 3:30 Eastern, I play in Chaz Calendar's Final Fantasy XIV inspired D&D 5th edition actual play here on this channel. So come check that out. That is also a hoot. We're just having a blast with that. So find me on Twitter at WHPubs, Facebook WH Publications, and we will see you next week. Bye.